everybody. Welcome to our next episode of Talking Doctor Who. We are covering the 5th and 6th episode of Season 12. We're talking about Fugitive of the Judoon and Praxeus. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I know we're kind of late, especially with the big reveals in one of these but we've just been super busy, but I'm excited to be able to talk about them. And I'm joined by my good friend, Jonathan North is here.
Hey.
Yes. So how have you been doing?
Pretty good.
Good. I made it through Sundance. I finished 26 movies in 10 days.
Oh, wow.
So it was pretty intense. Yeah. But it's a good experience. It forces you out of your comfort zone, seeing things that you wouldn't normally see. And I think that's the best thing about it. So it was a lot of fun, and also it was kind of funny because there's a movie called Tesla that I saw with Ethan Hawke that's very weird. Like at one point, like they break the fourth wall at certain times, and then at one point Tesla is singing karaoke, and there's times when all of a sudden Edison will be using an iPhone. It's really wacky, and I enjoyed it, but it was just kind of fun because. We just barely had Tesla on Doctor Who, and it was Doctor Who's kind of wacky, so I've sort of almost felt like Doctor Who-ish kind of movie to Tesla, but there's definitely one to look out for if you can handle something that's quirky, weird, and
sounds like it would be up my alley.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, but let's get started with this 5th episode, Fugitive of the Judoon, and we only have 2 more episodes left, and then a 2-part finale. So that's pretty exciting.
Seems like we just started, and
I know, doesn't it?
The end.
I know.
The season is so short.
Yes. So you have the characters, the Judoon, that are searching Gloucester for a fugitive. And we have seen the Judoon in Doctor Who before, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
They've been in 2 episodes of Doctor Who and one, I think it was a 2-part episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is one of the spin-off series from Doctor Who, like a decade ago or so now. Seems crazy that it was that long ago, but it probably was. I don't remember exactly what year, but it's been a while now.
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, it was 2009.
Yeah, so yeah. Right about that. Right about a decade then.
Decade, yeah. So, and I guess they originally appeared on when David Tennant was on.
Yes.
Right.
His first episode in the Martha season. So that would have been season 3. And I think they also came in on the last episode of season 4.
Yes. So there's a bunch of reveals in here, and a lot of stuff going on. The doctor is with Lee and Ruth Clayton, a married couple, and there's a woman who is named or Ruth is a tour guide with in Gloucester, and she is you think she's kind of shy, and there's another person who is in love with her at the bakery, I think it was, and thinks that this guy Lee is no good for Ruth, and that I don't know if that plot didn't really go anywhere as far as the love triangle thing.
No, it really didn't.
It was sort of weird. But basically you have Graham, Ryan, and Yaz that are transported to a spaceship, and so you have kind of these 2 sections going on. What did you think of the Judoon at least in the start of this episode?
I like them. I really like when they bring back old monsters, old creatures from past episodes. Some people think it's I don't know, leaning way too heavily on the past and using it as a crutch, but I don't care. I really liked that they brought them back, and I was excited to see them again.
Mm-hmm. So they're kind of basically like bounty hunters. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're. I think they call them like intergalactic police for hire, but really, they basically perform the same function as a bounty hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Lee ends up getting killed by by the Judoon, and then you have the Doctor and Ruth being surrounded by the Judoon, and you find out that Ruth has this big power that that the Doctor's like, what's going on here? Why do you have this? Why is the sonic screwdriver sensing such power? What's going on? And so that starts to kind of get things going. And then we find out that that Ryan, Yaz, and Graham, the spaceship that they're on, is piloted by Jack Harkness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious about this with you, that we've now had the Master return, we've had Jack Harkness return, and we're going to have another we'll talk about in a second. Is there too much of that? Too much kind of leaning on nostalgia, too many things returning instead of doing new things?
I don't know, because ordinarily this would seem like, I mean, yes, it does seem like it's a lot for one episode, and maybe it would seem like it's too much, but I mean, after the disappointing last two episodes, this one was just such a huge breath of fresh air, I guess. It really felt to me like I was back in like peak Doctor Who, and peak Doctor Who for me is like season 3, season 4. That was like the best years of Doctor Who, and I have nothing against what came later. I love Matt Smith, love Peter Capaldi. I've always been a fan of Doctor Who right along, but the first 4 seasons were like the best for me anyway.
Yeah, right.
I just love them, and this felt like that. Like I haven't felt like this watching Doctor Who in a long time, and I had all the big reveals spoiled for me before I even watched it. So to have me knowing what's going to happen in the whole episode and still feeling halfway to giddy while I'm watching it, like, this is so great, this is so exciting. I was just thrilled with this episode. So
So
maybe it is too much for some people, but it wasn't for me.
So, and he's played by John Barrowman, who was in, who's always played him, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we talked about him in when we talked about season 1.
Yeah.
So
He comes back for at least 2 episodes later on. And then he had a whole spin-off, which I still haven't watched, but you've seen probably most of his episodes by this point, I think.
I
So
mean,
even though you're not completely caught up, at least now that we're talking about something in the past, you actually have seen it. So
yeah,
you
exactly.
know what we're talking about.
Well, and I mean, it does feel like, boy, they're gonna have a lot to tie up in the next 2 episodes and then 2-part finale with
Yeah.
with the Master out there somewhere. I mean, that's surely going to bring him back. That's not all we're going to see of him, right?
Who knows? Like, they're talking like Captain Jack isn't even coming back and this was just a one-off thing, and I'm like, I really hope they're lying,
Yeah.
because why bring him back for this? I mean, it's more than a glorified cameo, but he was hardly in the episode at all. He never even met the Doctor. So it seems pointless to bring him back just to deliver one cryptic line about the last Cyberman or whatever it was, and then never see him again for the rest of the season. Same with the Master. It seems like they're setting something up with him and Gallifrey. It's like they better be going somewhere with this, because the last season was spent taking no looking back at previous seasons. Like, it was all standalone up until like the New Year's special where you have the Dalek return. But this season, it's like they're 180, reversing the last season, bringing in all this stuff from the past, which is fine, but I really hope they have an end game planned and they're not
Right.
just throwing everything they can into the show with no real plan.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So Ruth, her memories have been kind of wiped uh, free, so she doesn't remember, but she starts to get kind of triggered. She gets a text from Lee that brings back these different memories. She ends up at this lighthouse, and so.
So the thing with her memories is there is an episode that you have not seen yet that deals with something that the Time Lords have that basically rewrites their DNA and memories to make them human. Or I guess it could be any species, but so that they can hide somewhere without really even knowing they're hiding. So basically, she had become completely human
Okay.
and was hiding on Earth. So that's what that whole thing was with the thing in the lighthouse. That was where her memories, I guess, were hidden. When she
Mm,
broke open the thing, that's when you saw like the glowing light and everything. That was her memories returning. That's been
mm.
in a previous episode in season 3, which eventually, hopefully, we'll get there and you'll know exactly what all this is. But that was a callback to something that happened in a previous season.
Well, doesn't she basically find her TARDIS?
Yes.
Yeah, there in the lighthouse, and so Jack Harkness, he sends the companions all back, and with a message for the doctor, and then he goes away, and so they are with the doctor, and then once the doctor uh, finds the TARDIS, she is confused because she finds out that Ruth says this is my TARDIS, and that's when we find out that ta-da, Ruth is a doctor. And so yeah, you had been spoiled, but was it a pretty good moment for you?
Yeah, they set it up perfectly. Like, it's disappointing that I didn't get the shock of finding that out, but I knew what was coming, and I just loved watching it unfold because it was written so well, and it was shot so well, and the build up to it was just perfect. It was so good.
Yeah, it was really fun and really surprising. Will she have to be counted as the 14th Doctor? Or
Well, right now they're not saying where she comes in the timeline because neither her nor the Rose Doctor remember being the other. So we don't know what's going on with that. We don't know why, if she comes before the Doctor we have now, why doesn't the Doctor we have now remember being her? And if she comes after, why doesn't the Ruth Doctor remember when she was our Doctor? So we've
right.
got to figure out what's going on with the memories there. Like, why don't at least one of them should remember being the other? So that's a whole nother mystery in itself.
Is it possible? Is it possible she could be another person from another Time Lord from Gallifrey and not be our Doctor as we know it, but a whole nother being? Or is
It's,
there only one Doctor?
I mean, I suppose it's possible, but there's like they did some sort of a scan thing and it said they were the same person. So like they were the exact same person just at different points in their life. So unless they were lying about that, it's pretty clear that it's the same person. We just don't know any of the circumstances surrounding her existence. Like, where does she fit in to the Doctor's life?
Okay, that makes sense. So, because they show the vision of Gallifrey to the head of the Judoon and to her, and to her, so that made me wonder if maybe she. I mean, I guess because we have the Master, so we do have another Time Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So
And the one woman in the show, she was a Time Lord as well. before she died.
That was Gat, is her name?
Yeah, she was a Time Lord as well.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think she'll be regenerating because of the circumstances surrounding her death. I don't know exactly how that all works, but I'm assuming like being fully disintegrated means you can't regenerate.
Now this is we've seen Gallifrey keep getting destroyed. That seems to be a big, I mean, that's probably going back to sort of the themes of conservation and all those kind of things that seem to be very important to
I don't really
Chibnall.
know what they're where they're going with the Gallifrey story, because Gallifrey, they at the beginning of the new Doctor Who series back in 2005, Gallifrey was gone. Like it didn't exist anymore because of the Time War. Then you find out that, oh, it does exist. It was just hidden away in another universe to protect it from the Time War. Then it's back, but then in another universe, or it's, and like it keeps getting hidden or destroyed. I'm not sure of the exact timeline of all the events, but it keeps getting pushed out of the show in some way, only to be brought back and then gotten rid of quickly, which that's kind of frustrating because it seems like maybe lazy writing because they want the Doctor to be alone. Like a big thing with the new series is the Doctor is the last Time Lord, even though she is not. They are not the last Time Lord because the Master is still around.
Right.
And then you have this other one that was there. There's been a few other Time Lords here and there. And really, it's a time travel show. So really, there should be Time Lords everywhere just going through time.
Right.
It's kind of confusing, and it seems like they're taking an easy way out by destroying it all the time. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like it's easy because it's not written in such a way that it makes absolute perfect sense. But sometimes that's Doctor Who for you.
So the Doctor is basically left in Gloucester by Ruth, and she meets up with the companions, and they have the message from her, Jack Harkness, and that he sent with them. And so all we know is that the Doctor feels like something is coming for her, that there's danger out there. We don't know what the message said. And so yeah, and that's kind of how it ends up. But it was a pretty jam-packed episode, that's for sure.
Yeah, it really was.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the series of the season so far. And it's one of my favorite episodes we've had in a long time.
Yeah. So did you like this Joe Martin playing Ruth? Did you like that?
I thought she was great.
Yeah.
She was great. I really hope we see more of her.
Yeah, it would be weird to go to all that trouble of introducing a new Doctor. I mean, and I liked her her outfit. I thought was cool.
Oh yeah,
And
loved it.
Yeah, it was really good. And so I'm very curious what they're gonna do with that. I figure they got to at least explain it.
They better.
Yeah.
They really had better. I'm going to be so annoyed if we get to the end of the season and we don't have any explanation.
Because the next episode, Praxeus, it's like it didn't even happen. It's just this is just a standard episode.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of confused by that. Although this was a pretty crazy episode. This is one of the more horror kind of ones. And there were a couple things in this one that were really hard for me to watch. I admit I closed my eyes at certain parts. I'm like, because it's basically about this disease that it is brought here by aliens because they're trying to find an antidote or something, that it's taken over their whole planet. And they figure, oh well, you are fine with all these horrible plastics, you'll be fine with this. And so it starts spreading. And so then the Doctor and the companions have to try to find the antidote, and they're all over the world. This was definitely probably a pretty expensive one to make, I think, with all these set pieces that they had.
Yeah, it probably was, because they were at a lot of places.
Yeah, definitely. And so I mean, so first of all, there's this whole scene at the beginning with all of these birds that are attacking. I mean, there is no way you could get me to stay out overnight in a tent when all those birds are there. I've told this story on Hallmarky's podcast, but I've always been a little bit skittish when it comes to animals I'm not familiar with. I have a bit of a bit of an awkwardness about it, and that I get scared, and especially wild animals that aren't like domesticated. But anyway, and when I was on my mission for my church, there was a family that had literally like a whole row of birds. They probably had 10 to 12 birds in cage, these cages, and I it was just that kind of thing is just not for me. And but I was trying to be nice. And these two kids in the family, they're probably 10 to 12-ish kind of a thing. They thought it would be really funny because they knew how spooked I got around animals. They thought it would be really funny for them to throw their bird at me, and they would be this joke. And and so I'm just like walking along, and all of a sudden, woo, there's a bird right in my face. And I mean, it's horrible for the bird, of course, but it completely freaked me out. And ever since then, I'm always just like, the birds. I don't like birds. I don't like, leave me alone. And that whole scene with the birds was not my favorite. I was like, I don't like birds, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, or just any of those things. I mean, I respect it because I realize that it's scary, but yeah, birds not my favorite. So this one, and then just the people that get infected by this virus, they start having these scales all over their body, and it was pretty gnarly, I thought.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but I don't think it really grossed me out.
It
I
didn't
just thought it
really.
was
Oh
kind of
man.
weird.
And the scales grow and grow and grow until you completely dissolve as a person. I thought it was pretty gnarly. I really did. And so there's a bunch of different characters in this. You have the doctor, and then the companions, and you have this blogger named Gabriella, who is with her friend who gets attacked by the birds. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that at all.
That whole scene at the beginning just seems so dumb to me, because they were going to this place. It was supposed to be this beautiful waterfall. Then they find it's all taken over with trash.
Ew.
And they just decide to camp there anyway.
I know. You could not pay me to camp
I
there.
was like, what? Why would you stay in a trash pile?
I have no idea. Like, you got to be able to go somewhere else.
Yeah, like just go back into the jungle. Like, I would rather stay under the trees than sleep in literal garbage.
Right. Yeah, it was disgusting, but it was still creepy for me for some reason, just because I don't like birds. But then you have this you have these medical researchers named Suki and Amaru, and they're like looking into this disease in Peru, and you end up in Peru, Hong Kong, and Madagascar. And there's a astronaut named Adam, and he is the husband of policeman Jake, and he's always been really kind of insecure, and always felt like Adam is the braver one, the stronger one, the more admirable one. and you have Adam coming back through from space, and so they are attacked, and Adam gets infected with the disgusting. You know what? At first, it reminded me a little bit of is the weird tooth person.
That's what I thought too. I thought there was going to be some connection to that.
Because that was gross too.
I know.
I thought. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty. There's quite a bit of carnage for this episode. I mean, what? At least 2 people die, 2, 3, something like that.
Yeah, I guess it didn't bother me as much because you don't see any like gore. Like that's what gets to me. Like they just dissolved into like bits of shell or whatever they turned into. But when it didn't bother me as much as if they'd like been bloody and gory.
When those scales are coming up their body, it was pretty. I thought it was pretty crazy. But you get, I think that Yaz gets a little more to do in this episode than she's had in most of the season. You get a little personality from her. She's with Gabriella. She kind of has to try to be like, get it together.
The whole thing with Gabriella, it was just so weird because like her friend died and she didn't seem that upset. Like she moved on real quick, and I was like, why isn't she more upset about this? Like, but by the end, she's like totally happy, and she goes off with the 2 guys, like they're best friends, but like they didn't really even know her. She just seemed like a weird character. I was so confused by like everything she did.
Yeah, that's true. But you do see that Yaz sees the her and Yaz and Gabrielle end up with like following the aliens, and there's a kind of a there's, like I said, there's this lady Suki who has this lab in Madagascar, and so they basically find out that Suki is also sick, and that their plan was to try to kind of use humans as guinea pigs, basically.
Yeah.
And so the doctor, that she starts to kind of put all the pieces together, and the birds, the birds were like the first most susceptible to it, and then that's what makes them kind of violent and crazy birds. And so she is able to create the antidote in Suki's lab, and we find out that the disease is called Praxeus, and so the Suki ends up leaving, but then you have, I thought, a pretty gnarly scene when the birds kill Amaru, one of the aliens on the beach.
Was he an alien? I wasn't.
Yeah, he was there
sure.
with Suki. I think so.
They didn't really explain it that well. I was confused by who he was, other than just this guy who was helping her.
I think he was an alien. I was pretty sure. I thought he was, but I don't know.
That makes sense, but they never said specifically, so I wasn't ever sure.
Yeah. And so Adam basically volunteers to take the antidote, be the test dummy, and so he could die. And what did you think of the whole sort of romance between Adam and Jake?
It was fine, but I had the same problem with them as like every single other character in this episode. Like there were so many characters in here, they hardly got any fleshing out that I really didn't care about any of them. Mm-hmm. Like that was my biggest problem with this whole episode. Was like I didn't really care about anybody in this episode. Like everybody was fine. That's all I can say about them. They were fine. And like when he was about to die, I was like, well, here we go again. This is so cliche. And then I was a little surprised that they didn't have him die, because I was all ready to be angry at the writers for lazily killing somebody off when the doctor could save them in the TARDIS. And then she did. It's like, well, why didn't you do that like a few episodes ago with the mother and daughter? You could have gone back and saved them. But no, I did like that they subverted my expectations and actually saved them and gave them a happy ending. But like, it was just fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Like
too bad
everybody
that
was fine.
she couldn't save the the people who had gotten killed by the disease up to that point. But they find out that they're actually, the TARDIS is like taking them under the ocean. They're in like a pocket bubble caused by all the plastic, which was kind of interesting. And it kind of goes back into the whole theme of they're really pushing that environmentalist message.
I will say though that they did it better in this episode than they did in the last one, because there was no like turning to the camera and giving this big long sermon about how bad we're treating the planet. It was like it actually made sense in the story, and they didn't have to invent this ridiculous scenario. Like all the stuff about the plastic, like there are literal giant patches of garbage the size of islands in the oceans. They didn't need to make that up. That's a real thing. There are microplastics that are literally inside our bodies at all times because we've put them into everything. So they didn't need to make anything up to prove their point about pollution. And I liked that they used something that was actually going on in the real world rather than going hundreds of millions of years in the future and saying that, oh, humanity ruined the planet and then they turned into these gross monster creatures. That was just dumb.
Yeah.
This way, the message actually makes sense. And I appreciated that they actually tried to give a better message with this.
Well, and also they trust the audience to actually, they were not stupid. We don't need to spell
they
it
didn't
out.
need to have this big long speech at the camera about like they did in the last one.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought that, like I said, I thought those scales, I thought they were creepy. I definitely felt like, ooh, yuck, about it. But Suki ends up dying because the antidote doesn't work on her because she's not human. And so she dies. And then the doctor is able to cure Adam. And that, they really try to make that an emotional moment between Adam and Jake, which was sweet enough, I thought, but I'm a sucker for a romance.
I appreciate that they actually gave somebody a happy ending for once, because it seems like, at least in recent episodes, they've really tried to go for the, I don't know, tragic death to like, it feels fake, like the old couple in the other
in the
terrible episode, Orphan 55. The old couple having the husband get killed to like for no reason. Like they could have saved him. There was no reason to have him just get killed. And then have the old lady die as well. It just feels forced. So I did appreciate that they actually gave these two guys a happy ending.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And basically, like Jake, the ship is kind of sinking, and so the autopilot fails, and so Jake is going to pilot the ship, and he's going to they're going to try and spread the antidote over the whole planet. And so he's going to sacrifice himself in order to do that. But the doctor in the TARDIS is able to rescue him before the ship explodes. And then you see Jake, Adam, and Gabriella. They're off together to travel the world, and so that should be an interesting trio, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I don't know what she had to do with the two guys. It just seemed like she was inserting herself somewhere just because she wanted to have an adventure. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of her character at all.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought this one, like I said, it creeped me out sufficiently that I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, both the birds and the creepy scales. I thought both of those were pretty well done, and I liked the romance well enough. And so this one I think was pretty decent. I liked it. Kind of reminded me of the tree one from remember that one?
Yeah.
Where the person becomes the tree.
Yeah.
That was creepy too. So yeah, I mean I'd probably give it probably give the first one because it had so many fun with Fugitive and Judoon. Probably give it like an 8 out of 10. We'll have to see. It depends on what they do with it, and then it would be even higher. But I think I'd give this Praxeus, I think I'd give it like a 6.
Yeah.
6.5.
I'd say I would give the first one, Fugitive of Judoon. That was like an instant 9 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost everything was perfect in that episode. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think 6 is probably pretty fair for this one.
Mm-hmm.
As well.
So it should be pretty fun. And we have the next two episodes, Can You Hear Me? And then The Haunting of Villa Diodati. So that should be fun. And the next two are both directed by women, by a woman named Emma Sullivan. So that should be fun. And all the next ones are all written by Chris Chibnall. So
okay.
So
did he write Fugitive of the Judoon? I'm pretty sure he did.
He did. Yes, he co-wrote it.
He can be hit or miss for me, but if he can write them as well as he wrote Fugitive of the Judoon, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, luckily he didn't write Orphan 55. That wasn't him. So,
yeah.
He wrote Spyfall, both of them. He wrote Fugitive of the Judoon with another writer named Vinay Patel.
Okay.
And then he wrote Praxeus with Pete McTiggy, something like that. And then both of these next two, he's a co-writer. And then the finale he wrote outright. Okay. So anyway, we'll have to see what he comes up with. But
well, I hope he's going to pick up some threads that were left off in Fugitive of the Judoon, because I just want to know where that's going. I want more of that story.
Yeah, like if they don't explain more of that doctor art, that would be very frustrating.
Yes.
Because, I don't know, it's just confusing. I mean, and because they have counted doctors that are only in, they have that one that's just a TV movie, right?
Yeah, and he's been counted as canon. They even made a little short to bridge the gap between him and another doctor who was kind of brought in as a surprise, who comes before 9.
Yeah. So they would have to count her as the 14th Doctor, right?
If that's where she comes in, because we still don't know where she comes in. Like, we don't know how she fits into the timeline. There's a bunch of theories floating around as to where she could fit in, because apparently I haven't seen most of the original series. Like, I think I've watched all of the 7th Doctor, and I've probably watched a bunch of 4 or 5 and 6 because I had PBS and I would watch Doctor Who every Saturday night when I was a teenager. But like the early ones with black and white, and when there's like a lot of missing episodes, apparently they never had a full regeneration filmed between, I think, the 2nd and 3rd Doctor. Like, they never filmed a regeneration. Like, it never happened on screen. So people are wondering if maybe she fits in between number 2 and 3. And then there's another theory where maybe she's from a whole different line of doctors, maybe that came before the first Doctor. Like maybe the first Doctor wasn't the first Doctor, he just had his memory wiped. So it's very confusing as to where she's going to fit in. I like to think that maybe she's like an alternate universe Doctor, because they have played with alternate universes before, and they talked about, and this would almost make me forgive some of Orphan 55's transgressions, but they talked about the outcome of Planet Earth in Orphan 55 as being just one possibility of the future. So obviously they're kind of dabbling in alternate timelines there a little bit. So maybe she's from another timeline, which I think is a cool thing that they could explore. It would make her still be the same person as the Doctor, just her life branched off at a different point. I don't know. I don't know where they're going with this. There's a lot of possibilities there could be. I'm sure there's other theories that people have. Those are
If
just the ones I've heard.
she ends up being earlier in the timeline, so would everybody else bump up a spot then? If she's like you were saying with this,
I don't think they would renumber the Doctors, because they didn't when they inserted somebody between 8 and 9. They didn't renumber all the Doctors after that. They just gave him another name. They call him the War Doctor because he was the Doctor who was during the Time War. So I think they would probably just give her a name if she comes before, and they'd just call her the Ruth Doctor because that's her name in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they'd renumber everybody.
Yeah, interesting.
Because the numbers aren't part of the show itself. That's just something the fans use to keep track of which Doctor you're talking about, because they're all the same character. But the Doctor doesn't refer to herself as the 13th Doctor. None of the Doctors before her referred to themselves as the 7th Doctor or the 10th Doctor or the 2nd Doctor or whatever.
Yeah. So, and I did read earlier this week that I guess the actor who plays Ryan has gotten a gig on another show. So people are thinking that this will be the end for his character, at least at the end of this season. I forget what they said the show was called, but that and I don't know if they'll go down to just having 2 companions, or if they'll get totally new companions, or what's going to happen. But that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
What happens, because do you think it's worked having so many companions, or do you prefer just having the one?
I don't mind there being multiple companions. I just think that the way they've handled them has not been the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think they've been giving them enough backstory. Like, I think I've said this before, but like my favorite thing about the companions is when they have full lives outside of the Doctor, and you sometimes like go home, visit the families, have an adventure maybe with the family, and then you're off doing an adventure in space or whatever. Here, it's just like the companions are just there as companions. Like, that's basically the companions as they were back in the 60s, 70s, when the companions were just there as somebody to go with the Doctor for the Doctor to play off of. They're not really given a full story. And I know they did have a story for Graham and Ryan back in season 1, but that kind of has played out now, and now they're just kind of there.
Yeah, they're usually just kind of watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Yaz, she had snippets of a story, but not enough to make me really feel a connection to her like I did back when the series first restarted with Rose.
Right.
And you have this instant connection with Rose because you got to know her as a full person on her own before she even meets the Doctor, before they even go off on an adventure together.
Right.
So it really helps when you have the companions be a character outside of them as a companion of the Doctor. And it really doesn't feel like they've gotten much of that. So I guess it just comes down to who's writing it. And I don't think that the writers have known what to do with so many companions. But writers in the past have done well with multiple companions.
Has there been ever been 3 before? Or is this the first time with 3?
I think there has been 3, maybe for an episode here and there, but not 3 permanent companions that are always there. I'm trying to think if there has been, but usually it's 1. Sometimes it's 2. But usually if there's 3, it's just like temporary.
Right. Interesting. All right. Well, I think these were both pretty strong. So we'll have to see what they do next. So we'll have 2 more episodes of the podcast after episode 8 and then after the 2-part finale, and that'll be really fun. So thanks so much for joining me to talk about these episodes, and if you're listening, let me know what you thought. Let us know what you thought of these 2 episodes. Did you enjoy the big reveals in Fugitive of the Judoon? Did you think that the birds and the scales, the disease were creepy like I did in Praxeus? Let us know. That would be really fun. And so thanks so much. And Jonathan, where can people find you?
You can find me all over social media at John J. North, and you can find my YouTube channel and podcast that will be on YouTube and Anchor, iHeart Movies. And the most recent episode, Rachel was on with me. We talked about the most recent 3 Pixar Spark shorts.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So make sure you check that out if you're a fan of Pixar.
Yeah, definitely take a look at that. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And at the Hallmarkies podcast, we have a ton of fun. So thanks very much. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye.